Hi there and welcome to episode 2 of Sketch Endeavor. My name's Andrew, and if you're new here, let me take a minute to tell you what Sketch Endeavor is all about. I've been a professional artist now for the last 15 years, and in that time I've noticed something about my skills. I've committed a lot of time to painting, and I've noticed some improvement in my skills, but at times within my career, if I'm completely honest with you, I've noticed I've hit a plateau, and I desperately want to get better. I want to master painting, but I also want to master drawing. Now the idea is that drawing is a prerequisite to painting. And if we have a lacking of skills within drawing, that inevitably is going to affect our painting. So by bringing our drawing up to a particular level, by trying to master it, what we're doing is we're dramatically improving what we can turn out on the canvas. Now, there's this idea floating around out there of 10,000 hours required to master any given skill. And when we look at an apprentice going into a trade, an apprentice may commit maybe 2,000 hours a year for 4 or 5 years to become a master of that trade before they can go off and do their thing within that trade. So I'm thinking that it might require something similar for art. But a lot of people find that number of 10,000 quite daunting. For me, it's just symbolic. It's just this idea of having a big challenge ahead of me and rising to that challenge and really going for it. But it doesn't have to be 10,000 hours for you. So I'm not doing this to say, hey, you got to commit that time too, because that's just not possible for everybody. What I'm doing here is committing 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, taking 1 day off, and trying to stick to that amount of time as a non-negotiable. Like, that is my sketching time. That's my time to develop my skills and really work at my craft. And at that rate of 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, I'm going to be sitting at that drawing board for 17 and a half years. So for me, I just find that idea really attractive. But for other people, they have expressed that that was just too much, that they just wanted to enjoy their work, and that's fine. As long as you make a commitment, if you're going to do Sketch Endeavor and you're going to join me on this quest to improve your art as well, as long as you make a commitment of just a small amount of time daily, it could be 20 minutes, half an hour, even an hour, whatever you commit to, you're going to start to see those improvements in your art. I guarantee it. The one thing we can't get around is that commitment of time. If we want to improve our artwork, and I'd say most of us do, then we're going to have to put in those hours of what I call deliberate practice. This has got to be something that we're conscious about and we're seeking to improve each time we hit that drawing board. So with all of that said, I'm going to be responding to some of your comments and some of the questions that you've sent through to me through email or social media as I narrate over this video. So let's hit that drawing board and let's jump into this week's Sketch Endeavor. So here we are again at the drawing board, and I'm still committing that 2 hours a day, 6 days a week to this practice. Now I'm totally blown away by the response to the first Sketch Endeavor video, and this seems to have really started some interesting conversation, and I want to talk about a few of the comments that I've received through email, through social media, and also in the YouTube comments section. And this seems to have gotten a lot of people thinking and a lot of people talking. And mixed reaction, but for the most part positive. But a lot of people have some questions, and some questions are about that particular number, the 10,000 hours. Why have I set myself such a task? Why go for this? And what does that 10,000 number mean exactly? Well, as I was talking about in the first video, this was an idea I first heard about through Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Outliers, where the concept is it takes 10,000 hours to master any given skill. And this is backed up by a little bit of research, and there is a bit of science to that. However, I wouldn't say it's a solid law or a rule per se. Some people do it in more, some people do that in far less. On the same hand, you know, I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, and you look at somebody like Tim, and Tim will take a complex skill like learning Japanese, for instance, and becoming conversationally fluent in Japanese. He didn't take 10,000 hours to do that. Mind you, he's not a master of the language, but he's reached a level of competence in a very short amount of time. So people like him have got a way of efficiently breaking down skills and applying practices that work and becoming really proficient at things that most people consider complicated. So I'm kind of wrestling between these two ideas, and that was one of the first comments that I got, and quite a few people were commenting about the fact that 10,000 hours was pretty steep and pretty overwhelming. It's something that's quite daunting to try and commit yourself to such a huge figure. To me, this is just a personal thing, and I'm really inspired and encouraged by how many other people have decided to take up this challenge. I mean, this is no 100-day portrait challenge or 30 days of drawing in ink. This is committing yourself really to a lifetime of daily drawing practice. When I got a chance to sit down with Dr. DeMartini personally, this is well before we did the podcast, episode 3 of the Creative Endeavor, I told him in our coaching session that I wanted to be a master. I desperately wanted to master this. And he asked me, well, what are you willing to do to achieve your goal? And I told him, whatever it takes. And his response was that that's absolutely what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do whatever it takes, because that's the price of mastery. I recognize right now at this stage in my drawing ability, I'm reasonably competent. I'm pleased with what I'm producing, but I'm well aware of the fact that I'm not a master. There's so many other artists out there from the past and even alive today that are amazing draftsmen and just incredible with graphite and charcoal, and they have real command of their subject. And to me, this is pretty far away from having command of my subject. Here I'm using photographic reference to draw these horse portraits like you see here. So I really want to get to that place where I know this subject inside and out. And the only thing that's going to allow me to achieve that is by putting in time. So that is a very symbolic number for me, that 10,000 hours, because it's representative of the sheer commitment that I'm making, and promise that I'm making to myself. Andrew, you have to show up on a daily basis and commit yourself to getting better. This is what it takes. Now, again, this is just something personal for me. I had a comment from somebody that said, well, this actually would leach the joy, the enjoyment out of my art practice. If that's how you feel, then by all means, do what works for you. But I really am putting this out there first for myself as a diary entry, as just me spewing thoughts into the microphone here while I watch myself doodle on these sketch pads. But it's also just a call out to people who would resonate with this and also recognize that they want to make that commitment and they really want to try to get as good as they possibly can. But if you're in the position where you just want to do art for the enjoyment of it, you just want to relax, you're not interested in really pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, really throwing yourself into this and mastering it, if you're just doing art for just art's sake, just for yourself, just for your enjoyment, just something to do on the weekend, then by all means, keep doing what you're doing. Do what works for you. I personally just gravitate towards these things that are difficult. And I like that. It just seems to work with my personality. On the weekends, I go hiking in the mountains here in New Zealand with my wife, Rachel. And when we're doing that, you recognize from the outset when you're starting to climb a mountain and go along this trail, you can see the peak from the base of the mountain. Sometimes you can't, but you can see the sheer scale of the task that's ahead of you. And to me, that's quite attractive. That's something that draws me towards it. And that sense of achievement that you feel when you're on top of the mountain is incredible. And not only that, but there's the reward of the view from up there. So to me, that's a really nice metaphor for sketch endeavor. And I'm doing things in my personal life away from the drawing board and away from the easel that are quite difficult, from the workouts that I do at the gym to, the hiking, like I just mentioned, even going out on plein air painting. It's These are all things that are feeding back into my art. And again, this is just my own personal approach to it. And if that is something that works for you and you feel that you resonate with, then maybe try and do a little bit more of this. And I hope that this inspires you. But if this just does not jive with your personal philosophy, then no worries. Now, look, I said again from the outset that if this is 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, taking Sundays off, I'm going to be here for roughly 17 and a half years. So by that stage, I can't math, but I'm going to be in my 50s. That's cool. At the time that I'm 50, then I still have some time ahead of me to continue to produce some good work. I've still got some good solid years left in my career. That doesn't put me off. I mean, hopefully I'm around that long. You never know what could happen in life, right? There are some people out there, though, that are a bit concerned about that because they're like, well, I'm already much older. I don't know if I'm even going to be around in 17 and a half years because as it is, I can't commit 2 hours a day. That's fine. Again, it's just symbolic. What is more important about Sketch Endeavor is the habit of putting in the time. Whatever time that is for you, it's going to work. You're going to see an improvement. For me, 2 hours a day was ideal to throw that in there. So I could commit to that. But for you, it might be 20 minutes a day. But as long as you show up for 20 minutes per day as your non-negotiable sketching time, you're going to see that that's going to have enormous benefits, not only for your art, your painting, but just for drawing itself. You're going to notice that you're going to start to make better marks, cleaner marks. You're going to start to express yourself. You're going to start to have more control of your tonal values. You're going to see these shifts start to happen. So here I'm at day 9, as you can see, and I'm sketching away here, just putting in my daily time, and I'm already starting to see some shifts happen with this particular technique. Now, again, you've seen me start off my drawings here with some very basic light construction lines, and I'm drawing using a very hard lead, around an H, 2H, and then from there I'll build up the image tonally with clutch pencils that you could see me using here, and occasionally I'll use those mechanical pencils too. I'm pressing pretty lightly with a clutch pencil, but it's a softer lead. And those softer leads allow that graphite to be deposited much easier across the surface. Now here you'll notice that I'm going about with that smudging stick and creating a bit more of a sculptural feel across the surface, and then going back over the top with the mechanical pencil, much finer lead. Here this is a 1mm lead. And I'm also using a 0.35 and a 0.5. The more common one is probably the 0.5 for me. Now I'm going to have a list of some of the drawing materials that I'm using in the description down below this video. A lot of people have been asking what kinds of pencils I like to use. What is that cool little eraser? While I mention that, it is a Tombow Elastomer eraser, a 2.3mm diameter on that eraser. And it's just one of these mechanical retractable erasers. I think that particular model is called a Mono Zero. So look that one up. It should be available pretty much anywhere, or you'll find something that's very similar. A lot of the drawing shops and art stores that I've been to have got some sort of mechanical eraser. I'm using a clean sheet of paper as a shield for my hand as well, just to stop myself from smudging the drawing too much after I've put on these finer marks. I really do enjoy where this technique is going, and I'm finding that the more I do it, the better I'm getting with that hatching motion, that the coordination is starting to come back, and the rhythm with my hand moving back and then that back and forth with the end of the lead, it's creating this chattered effect that is starting to get more and more even the more I practice it. And that hand-eye coordination is starting to come back to me. And this was one of the things I was hoping was going to happen. But again, this is the result of just putting in the time. So by the end of this week, it would have been 24 hours of making marks with my hand. So we're getting somewhere. I might stop using this technique after a little while, maybe adapt it, change it, work with something. But I wanted to just commit myself to just this one method and see where it could go, and then reassess the situation when it comes time to start the new week. So here we are at day 10 now, and I've started to introduce a bit more additional reference material. I'm still using that photographic reference. I don't have command of my subject quite yet. I'm using my own photographs that I've taken over the years. I've got a pretty huge file just on horses, from horses that I photographed in Australia, in the United States, all across New Zealand. Just anytime I came across a horse, I got the camera out, I photographed it. Here, this horse was on a farm in Daylesford, where I used to live in Victoria, in Australia. And I just love the way the light was shining off this animal. So again, I'm just taking my straight photograph that I have in my reference file, and I'm trying to faithfully and accurately translate exactly what I'm seeing in that photo and get that down onto the paper. But that additional reference material from Ellenberger's Animal Anatomy for Artists, which is a great resource, and those plates by Dietrich, they're helping me understand why certain masses and forms are catching the light the way they do. What is that bone that's sticking out there? What is that vein? Where's it coming from? Where's it going? That's helping just broaden my understanding here. So I started to introduce a bit more of that, and I find that it's helping. So gradually I'm starting to build a mental bank of knowledge, and hopefully this just builds and builds and builds to the point where I can have command over the subject, and maybe I don't need photographic reference at all. That if I had to put a horse in a painting in whatever position I wanted to suit the composition, I wasn't just limited to my photographic reference. But here I recognize I'm just not at that stage yet, because if I try to do that from this stage, I might be able to draw a reasonable looking horse so that most people will look at it and go, yeah, that's a horse, looks pretty cool. But anybody who really understands horses, who knows horses, knows about horse behavior, they might say, yeah, it looks okay, but you're a little bit off here. What's it doing with its leg? Why has it got that weird look? Why is its ears in that position? It might not make sense. And the trouble here from this position that I'm in now is I don't know what I don't know. And that's a very dangerous position to be in. So it's time to hit the books. It's time to study. And it's time to put in my sketching time. And there's no way around it. Now, before I talk more about the technique, while we were on the subject of the 10,000 hours, there's a fantastic comment from somebody who pointed me in the direction to a podcast, which was an interview with Julia Cameron. The podcast was the James Altucher Show, and in particular, this was episode 484. Now, I have a book by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. It's a famous book. Many people have read it, and I really appreciate a lot of what she has to say. I must admit, it's been several years since I've looked at that book. I've got it on my shelf, and I was inspired to kind of go back and revisit some of her work after listening to this conversation. She's a fascinating person, and a lot of what she says works, but she did take issue with that notion of 10,000 hours, and she even put it in terms of emotional terrorism, I think was the expression she used when she was talking about the task, the enormity of that number, as a way that a lot of people would find it just debilitating from the outset. Now, again, I've already explained my position on that. I think it jives with my personality. It's something that I gravitate towards because of the enormity of it, because it is difficult. Maybe I'm insane. That's a distinct possibility. But I like it. And I do at the same time appreciate what she's saying. And I think that, she's not wrong. She's she's right, because for a lot of people that is the case, and maybe that's not something that would work for them. But just wanted to mention that because it's another interesting take on this idea of 10,000 hours and a fascinating conversation. So if that sounds like something that you would enjoy, then make sure you check out that episode. James Altucher Show, episode 484, interview with Julia Cameron. So here we are at day 11, and I'm already starting to feel that technique working for me. And I'm starting to, again, just build up that hand-eye coordination a little bit more, and it's starting to flow. So I thought maybe here I'd try and loosen things up a little bit, try and get a bit more freedom, and try a different technique from the outset of building up that tone. Rather than use so many of these clutch pencils, I start using a carpenter's pencil, which has got a nice flat broad lead on it. And it's a reasonably soft carpenter's pencil. That one's about 3B or 4B. And it's allowing me here to just draw in these big blocks of tone relatively quickly. And then I'll go back over the top and begin smudging with the paper stumps to create some more of that form. So that was just one of the little changes that I made here. Now, I got a fantastic comment and some feedback from Ken Brown, who left comments in the YouTube comments section in regards to smudging the drawing with my finger. So I did stop that after doing it a few times in week 1, and I went for the paper stump. Now, the paper stump, that helps me avoid transferring any of the oils and acids from my skin, but I also get a bit more control by using that stump, by applying it in a particular way. I'm also trying to use much softer leads so that I'm not embossing the paper, as per Ken's comment. So I really appreciate feedback like that. I do find that this is really a cross-fertilization of ideas. I'm getting a lot out of this too by having so many thoughtful comments posted in that comment section down below. So again, by all means, I don't think that I have this thing whipped. I'm not trying to put this out there like I'm a master at drawing by any means. I'm just sharing with you my particular process, my thought process, knowing full well that this is going to develop and change. And I hope that this inspires other people too, to just go for it. Wherever they are, just start where you stand and just really put yourself out there and go for it. And try to do what you can to improve your art. Now, as I'm drawing, I'm asking myself those 3 questions constantly that I talked about in Sketch Endeavor 1. Those 3 questions are, what's working, what's not working, and what if? Now, the answers to those questions are pretty important, and it's important that you ask these with a level of intensity where you're really looking for the answer. You're looking for the right answer. So what's working, that's a way of us trying to stay on the positive side of things from the outset and not getting discouraged and not getting down on ourselves. I mean, maybe you'll turn out a drawing. I know I've turned out several here in this exercise that I'm just not happy with, but I just continue. But maybe you'll turn out something that you're not happy with at all, and you start to feel that depression starting to set in, this feeling like, it's worthless, I suck. Look, we all go through that. We all have that internal dialogue. But it's important when you ask yourself what's working here, you ask it in a serious way. There has to be something that is working. There's something about it that you can enjoy. There's something about it you can appreciate. So for me, let's take this horse, for example. What's working? Well, I do like the range of tones, and I like the speed in which that pencil, that carpenter's pencil, laid down that tone quite quickly, and how nicely that kind of seemed to blend into the paper. What's not working? Well, I think I'm fighting against the paper itself that I'm using. I'm sketching into a relatively cheap sketchbook that I've had laying around the studio for years. It was blank, so I just grabbed it and I just started going. To me, I think that might be working against me because it just seems to have a little bit too much tooth. Now, those 2 questions feed directly into the third question of what if? And that what if is open-ended. You get to direct that as the artist to where you feel you should go. So for me, what if I changed something about this process? What if I kept more of what was working, but changed something about what wasn't working? So what if I kept applying this technique, but changed my paper? Or what if I changed some aspect of the subject? What if I selected different reference material? What if I tried next time to just do the whole body of the horse? What if, what if, what if? You could answer this a multitude of ways, and really that's up to you as the artist. But this is a way of altering your course, just changing your direction incrementally, and not wholesale changing it, but really trying to provide a bit of structure to this process of sketching daily so that you're making these small adjustments and small improvements, and then the compounding effect of this over time will be enormous. Already well into the second week here, but after doing most of week 2, I'm already starting to see these improvements starting to happen. And now we're on to yet another day. And this day here, day 12, this is when the wheels really fell off for me. So I'll explain what happened here. I'm beginning to sketch in the sketchbook, and I'm having a really off day. I told myself that sketch endeavor time for me was non-negotiable, but I'm drawing this horse here with the full-blown flu. As I said, I probably pushed it way too hard, and I'm drawing this feeling absolutely rotten. And the day after this drawing, I spent quite a large portion of that day in bed. And then the next day I was totally fine. But I think it's the combination of the early mornings, the late nights as well, burning it at both ends, climbing mountains on the weekend, and then just doing ridiculous hours in the studio. I tend to not know where that line is until I've already crossed it. And my wife, bless her, she's just hanging around in the background going, yeah, told you that would happen. So here, the drawing, this one at day 12, is not my best work, but I thought, no, I've got to get into this. I got to do it. If Michael Jordan can play the playoffs with the flu and food poisoning, I can draw a horse. So I had that thought going on in my head while I'm drawing this thing. But still, hey, at least I showed up and kept doing it. So trying to practice with some of those things in place and trying to stick with what I felt was working through the week and doing the best I could with the technique. Now, a lot of people, again, have been asking about my pencil holder. Where did I get that from? Keeping all those drawing utensils nice and organized there to the side of the drawing board. That was actually made by a buddy of mine on a 3D router. A good friend of mine is a sculptor, and he had made a couple of these and attached them to his drawing board. And I was like, man, I'd sure love to have one of those. So he made me a really beautiful set of those. And the latest ones, which will show up in next week's Sketch Endeavor, he made one with 10,000 printed across the top of it to remind me of my commitment to myself. So that was fantastic. So if you wanted to get your hands on one of those pencil holders, unfortunately, that's just not going to be possible, but that is something that you could probably make yourself out of hardboard or even cardboard, really. It's just some notches in a few different pieces and some holes to receive the ends of the pencils. And they just lean up against the drawing board, or you can just tape them down to the drawing board directly. Again, I'm so blown away and encouraged by the response to the last Sketch Endeavor, so I'm going to do my best to continue to upload these videos. I really do appreciate that. And I also really appreciate people that have been using the hashtag Sketch Endeavor when posting their work to Instagram, and people that are following that hashtag as well. Just want to give a quick shout out here to Dino Cook, who's got a tattoo place in Atlanta, Georgia. And I understand Dino watches my videos along with the rest of his team down there in Atlanta. So shout out to Dino and everybody down there at the tattoo shop. Dino is also a fantastic oil painter and draftsman as well. And you've got to be good at drawing if you're going to be tattooing on people. I mean, come on. you know what you're doing, you can't exactly erase. So I admire anybody that has the courage to draw on people and also do an amazing job like what Dino does. So shout out to Dino down there. But also other people that have been using that hashtag and posting to Instagram. It's just amazing to see all of that creativity coming out and people really embracing this challenge and grabbing hold of it with both hands and just running with it, knowing full well that this is no 100-day or 1-month thing. This is a commitment to whatever it takes, whatever you can do to improve your work as an artist, and not being satisfied with where you are. Again, going back to the podcast that I had with my father, what he said, I believe this with everything that I am. I just, this resonates with me so much that if you're in a position where you say, this is the best I can do, then you're really not telling yourself the truth, because you can always do better. You can always find something to improve. There's always another rung on that ladder, so to speak. And so really this is a commitment to ourselves of going, hey, there is room for improvement here. I can do better. Somebody did leave a comment on my YouTube channel saying that I was being dishonest, that, already I could draw, so that I'm actually not telling the truth here, and that, I need to be a little bit more upfront about that. So without mentioning that person's name, it's not about comparing myself to anybody else. I know full well within myself that I can improve. And I know the only thing that I can do to do that is to commit the time. And it doesn't matter where I am in relationship to anybody else. It only matters the best that I can do for me. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that's probably going to be true for you as well. I imagine if Sketch Endeavor is something that you're committing yourself to, then the only thing you're really concerned with is as good as you can be for yourself. And it comes down to making that commitment of time. Now, my buddy Kelly Foss posted something on her Instagram, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to share that with you because I think it ties in directly to what we're talking about here. And these are her words, and I love this. People look at the life of an artist through the lens of romanticism, but fail to see the truth. It's a lot of late nights, wringing your brain dry of creativity, saying no to social things because there is no after work or weekends. There are projects to do, correspondence, thinking ahead, getting a jump on things, trying not to fall behind, coffee. It's a lot of hustle and hope. It's not easy, but I wouldn't trade it. That's the artist's life. And I just love those words so much because as soon as I read them, I'm like, you know what? That's the truth right there. When I look at my own life, I see a lot of that reflected in what I do and how I live. And coming back to that 10,000 hours and the sheer scale of the commitment, most people, I don't think, out there that aren't creative and aren't artists won't understand that. It won't jive with them. They won't comprehend it. But if you're a creative and you're striving to make yourself better, then I truly believe that making this commitment and throwing yourself into it and just being prepared to do whatever it takes, you're going to start to see those improvements. So as I look back over this week and the level that I've gotten to during week 2, I'm starting to see the benefit of the time that I've spent so far. I'm only 24 hours in now at this point, and there's a long way to go. Not every drawing that I've turned out here I'm totally happy with. I'm starting to make those notes in my head about what direction I want to take this in and what are some of the changes I'm going to be making in week 3. I can say now, though, I cannot wait to hit the sketchbook again next week. Now, I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Sketch Endeavor, and if you did, then please hit that like button for me and leave me a comment down below. I really hope that you take me up on this challenge and you join me in this quest to improve our artwork by making that commitment of time. And again, it doesn't have to be an insane number like 10,000 hours, like what I'm committing to. That's just me. I gravitate towards things that are difficult, as we've discussed. It could just be a small amount of time, but whatever you can do for you to take your abilities to where you can take them to. It's about being the best that you can be. So I hope you feel inspired and encouraged by this video, and I'm going to continue to make more of these Sketch Endeavor episodes. But even if I don't end up making this a weekly episode, you can guarantee I'm going to be committing that time at that drawing board. Now, if you want to commit to this challenge and put your work out there so that others can see it as well, then post your drawings to your Instagram and use that hashtag SketchEndeavour. Now, I'm going to be following that hashtag very closely, and you'll even find I'll be clicking like and commenting on your work. So make sure you use that. It's been amazing to see this incredible outpouring of creativity from all across the world, and I can't wait to see more of what you produce. Now, if you want to see more episodes of Sketch Endeavor, my podcast, The Creative Endeavor, or some of my YouTube painting tutorials, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that notification button so that you're notified when I upload another video. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, but most important, make sure you subscribe through my website. It's absolutely free to do so. Simply enter your name and email address there on the subscribe tab on my website, and I'm in touch with my subscribers regularly. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon.